As I mentioned in class, there are many people that are going to influence decisions of different congressional members. Presidents act as partners with Congress in the legislative process, but all presidents are also Congress adversaries in the struggle to control a lot of the legislative outcomes. Presidents will have their own legislative agenda based in part on their party's platform and their electoral coalition, meaning who they try to encourage to vote for them based on their stance on particular policy areas. Political scientists sometimes call the president the chief legislator. The president's task is to persuade Congress that his agenda should also be Congress's agenda. He does this every year during the State of the Union address that takes place in January, as we've mentioned before. Presidents have many resources at which they can use to influence Congress members. They may try to influence members directly, but more often will leave the White House lobbying to the Congressional Liaison Office. And those are people that work primarily through regular meetings with the party leaders in the House and Senate and represent the president's views. Rather than creating the conditions for important shifts in public policy, an effective president is going to truly try to be a facilitator who works at the margins of coalition building to recognize and exploit opportunities presented by a favorable configuration of political forces. Presidential success rates for influencing congressional votes will vary widely among presidents and within a president's tenure in office, just depending on what their relationship is like with congressional members. Presidents are usually most successful early in their tenures and when their party has a majority in either one or both houses of Congress. Regardless, in almost any year, the president will lose on many issues because he can't gain the support that he needs. Other influence is going to come in through the political parties. Parties are most cohesive when Congress is actually electing its official leaders, like Speaker of the House, Majority Leader, Minority Leader. A vote for the Speaker of the House is a straight party line vote. On other issues, though, the party coalition may not stick together. Votes on issues like civil rights have shown deep divisions within each party based on geographic location within the United States. Differences between the parties are sharpest on questions of social welfare and economic policy. We have seen this increasing idea that Congress has become more ideologically polarized and more likely to vote according to the two-party lines. There are fewer conservative Democrats, often in the South, who often sided with Republicans, and fewer moderate Republicans, often in the Northeast, who would occasionally side with Democrats. However, compared to multi-party parliamentary systems such as Israel, the majority party has the ability to lead in a stable and consistent fashion until at least the next election occurs. Party leaders in Congress are limited in their powers to obtain support from party members. They cannot remove a member from the party, although they do have some influence with their committee assignments. Recently, the parties, especially the Republicans, have been a growing source of money for congressional campaigns and thus hold a lot of influence on the voting decisions of the members of Congress. This graph is showing a great representation of the differences between the Democrats and Republicans in Congress and how their party ideologies have polarized throughout time. There are a variety of views concerning how members of Congress should actually fulfill their function of representation for their constituents. The 18th century English legislator Sir Edmund Burke favored the concept of legislators as being trustees. This would be where they use their best judgment to make policy in the interests of the people. The people trust them to make the right decision because they voted for them. Thus, they call themselves trustees. The concept of representatives as delegates calls for representatives to mirror the preferences of their constituents, thus meaning that you literally would want to contact your constituents, find out where they stand on the issues, and then vote accordingly. But most members of Congress are actually what we call politicos. They combine the trustee and the delegate roles as they attempt to both represent and also try to be decisive policymakers. Winners of congressional elections tend to vote on roll calls pretty much as they said they would. The most effective way for constituents to influence congressional voting is to elect candidates who match their policy positions. On some controversial issues, it is perilous for a legislator to ignore constituent opinion. They need to listen to the voters. Representatives and senators have recently been concerned about the many new single-issue groups that will vote exclusively on a candidate's position on a single issue, for example, gun control, and not really on the member's total record. Members of Congress do pay attention to voters, especially on visible issues, but most issues do not interest voters. However, it's difficult for legislators to know what the people want. On less visible issues, other factors such as lobbyists and the members' individual ideologies will influence their policy decisions. Lobbyists, some of them even former members of Congress, represent the interests of their organization. They can also provide legislators with crucial information and often can give assurances of financial aid in the next campaign. There are more than 35,000 individuals in Washington representing 12,000 different organizations. The bigger the issue, the more lobbyists are involved in it. Paid lobbyists whose principal purpose is to influence or defeat legislation must register and file reports with the Secretary of the Senate and the Clerk of the House. A 1995 lobbyist regulation law requires anyone hired to lobby members of Congress, congressional staff members, White House officials, and federal agencies must report what issues they were seeking to influence, how much they were spending on the effort, and the identities of their clients. In theory, the disclosure requirements would prevent shady deals and curb the influence of a lot of special interests. I hope this provides more clarification to you about how different people can affect the congressional process. Make sure to review all of your notes and study for Chapter 12.